We are really looking forward to hearing April Ambrose talk about her work with Arkansas Advanced Energy Association. So just before we get started, do you want to, my name is Jean Larson, and I'm co-state coordinator with the fabulous Jan Shaper. And could you just please put in the chat where you're calling in from and what was your most favorite part of the conference so far? And while you all are doing that, I'm going to just introduce April. Let's see what's happening in the chat though. Yes, so just tell us where your name and yeah, your name is there, where you're calling in from and what you liked most about the conference so far. Jan says she loved hearing from so many talented volunteers. It's great to see you today. Shreve, Florida, favorite part for me is the DEI, the DEI workshop that we did and hearing experiences, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Fabulous. All right, so April, thank you so much. We are thrilled that through the great leadership of Lauren Waldrop with the Arkansas Advanced Energy Association that she brought you on board a couple of months ago to head up the Director of Workforce Development. And it's an amazing training program. And we're just thrilled. Let me just give a little background for you because it's pretty impressive. April is a lead fellow and is the Director of Workforce Development at AAEA right now. She's an Arkansas native with 20 years of experience in sustainability and advanced energy industry. April designed her own major at Hendrix College in environmental education. She founded the Arkansas Earth Day Foundation, among other nonprofit leadership, and provided over 500 educational presentations to local and national groups. Then she worked with Integrity, a Little Rock-based energy and sustainability consulting firm, and took it from 2 to 130 employees. So very, very impressive. We're so, grateful that you're here in Arkansas doing this really, really good work. And that, and we, in addition to the people who are with us today, we're also recording this. And we have quite a few people who couldn't make it to the conference today, but really want to hear your talk about your work. So thank you.
Thank you. I am so excited to talk to you all about this new program that we're doing. I have been working on climate change for some time, so I'm just going to jump right into it. But I've got the chat up, I think, where I'll be able to see it. And so if you have questions, just holler or jump in. So thanks, Jean, again, for bringing me in, and Jan. You guys have always been so great to put this stuff together. So just by way of intro of the organization, the Arkansas Advanced Energy Association is a 501c4, and they are a lobbying organization. And so they have been probably the most critical in making solar such a sort of gold rush in Arkansas, at least up until recently. And we can talk about that solar bill, but they brought together the utilities, the solar and energy efficiency companies, the policymakers, and all of the governmental organizations. And they've just done a great job collaborating in that way. So advocacy, education, it's a membership-based organization. And now the Arkansas Advanced Energy Foundation, which has primarily just done education in the past, they've got a great residential solar guide up on their website. If you're getting quotes on solar for your house and are trying to figure out how to interpret them, they've got a great guide to that end. But they also are now working on workforce. And so that's probably the biggest need that their membership had expressed. So I'll talk to you about how I came to serve in that capacity. So first, because I'm talking about workforce, I always want to tell my story of how I came to be where I am, because I think all of us telling our stories help people to understand that for the most part, it is incredibly rare that you graduate college, get a job in your career, advance through that same company and graduate successfully, from that company with a great retirement. Everybody has really interesting paths to get where they are. So this is first a picture of all of my headshots from leading up to current there. And my evolution. My parents are back to the landers in the 70s. So I come about this naturally. I like to say the apple didn't fall far from the tree. It hit the trunk a few times on the way down. My dad, we made outdoor furniture, and then he opened a health food store. I went to Hendrix. I worked for an integrative medicine doctor, Dr. Betsy Hendrix. And it was during that time that I actually started Conway Earth Day as a way to showcase the relationship between health and the environment. And then I worked for the Arkansas Climate Awareness Project, which was a part of what's now the Pew Charitable Trust environmental arm. I founded Arkansas Earth Day Foundation. I worked for, it was Eco Integration, Veridian, and then finally Integrity, the name changes of the same organization. And that was a green building consulting firm. So I went from really broad education on sustainability and climate change to really specific buildings related. And it was through that experience that I came to do what I'm doing now. But of course, while we do this for everybody, we also do this for ourselves, right? I mean, we do this to sustain our lives, as it were. So this is my husband, Justin, and our daughter, Luna. So this is my team. Obviously, Lauren Waldrop is the executive director of the organization. She is off running policy. And we've got Kate Wilson, who also works on the association side. But on the workforce development side, Jenny Sales is my talent recruiter and career coach. She is fantastic for helping individuals learn how to leverage their strengths, how to learn what they're the most happy doing and fulfilled doing so that they will succeed long-term in their careers. Our mission is to connect Arkansas's organizations to develop an equitable pipeline of clean economy, career education, and skill development for diverse students and adults to get those equitable, quality, family-sustaining jobs, for the employers to get a diverse, qualified workforce pool, for public and private partners to streamline our offerings and leverage funding together, and then, of course, with the ultimate goal of reducing our collective impact on climate change and human health. Right now, I would say my goal in workforce is really implementing some innovative programs, strengthening the educational pathways, and bridging that skills gap between employers and talent in this industry. Oops, sorry. So what is the industry? There's no established definition of green jobs. Generally speaking, environmentally friendly and enhancing products and services. And so that could include all of these types of industries. But, when you talk about a green job, nobody would argue whether like a solar installer is a green job. Absolutely. But what about the guy who sells that solar array? Or what about the guy who mows the grass around it? Or the accountant as a part of the firm to provide a loan against it? All of those, there's core green jobs, there's green enabled jobs, there's jobs that are coming online now, there's jobs that we're looking out into the future that we think may come online in the future. But when I talk to employers, these are the jobs that they're saying that they need filled. So on the solar side, you've got the installer, the electrician, which I'll talk about later as I would argue as being separate roles in the state, the designer, the finance, the land aspect of solar, those that understand GIS, but also those that can maintain the area around those arrays and maintain the area around some of our emerging trails, bike and hiking trails, to remove the invasives, allow the natives to flourish. There's also, agrivoltaics, where you're growing crops potentially under or around the panels. Then there's the energy efficiency side. So reduce what you've got before you start producing. And that's where you have your energy auditors, your utility rate analysts. Are they paying what they should be paying? Are their demand and usage charges appropriate? The energy manager of those projects, the energy engineer, which calculates not only the savings, but also the solutions and what the impact of those are. And even HVAC, we recently put a new heat pump system on our house that it's wonderful. It's full heat pump down to negative 22 degrees. I have no heat strips, so I'll never get that kick in of those expensive days. And they had to bring in, It's the first one of its kind in Arkansas. And so they had to fly in the manufacturer to help them learn how to install it. We need to train our teams, our HVAC installers, better to be able to understand how to install heat pumps in the state. There's the electric vehicles, the electric vehicle charging stations, not only those installers, but the maintenance and even the sales teams related. Some of these vehicles are going to standard dealerships, and those guys don't know how to talk about the benefits and drawbacks of EVs for somebody's lifestyle. There's water. Central Arkansas Water expressed great need in a number of different water treatment and delivery aspects, and that is very common around the state. We're 30% low on some of the roles that are needed for water distribution in the state right now. And of course, any water that you don't treat is energy saved, right? And potentially significant amounts. And then the green building industry, the energy side of that, the sustainability side, which is taking into account, indoor air quality and daylighting and materials and all of the things that sort of energy is not covering, the carbon calculation aspect of that. And then now we're also seeing a pretty big emergence, especially in European owned companies, for corporate ESG, environment, social governance, which is sort of a shareholder, a stakeholder confidence tool. And they're needing corporate sustainability officers or ESG managers at those companies and at those plants in Arkansas. So this is the pipeline. This is what I would call the pipeline of green jobs for any career, really, right? You have the exposure level. At what point did you know that an energy auditor was a job or that solar installer was a job? Maybe you heard about it in the classroom. Maybe you saw it in the media. Maybe you went to a career fair, right? Then what is the education that's needed to, once somebody is exposed? I love talking to student groups and other groups about these jobs, but I always leave saying, man, our pipeline is broken because they don't know where to go. What do? You go home and you Google energy auditor, where is the place that they go to figure out how and where to take the next step? And then there's the early job experiences. And that's really what I'm going to talk about most today, are the internships, the apprenticeships. And then once you have that career, the mentorship and the ongoing professional development. So we're really in early job experiences today. It was that pipeline that I was looking at when I worked at Integrity and said, we need more diverse candidates. I had started our DE&I group within the company. We were finding new ways to be inclusive in our approach, but we were not reaching the candidates that we wanted. And to a large degree, because they didn't exist, we were having to train them up inside of our company. But as I found those that had the willingness and the capacity, where do I insert myself in that pipeline to make the biggest impact on green jobs in the state? And I couldn't figure it out. So I hosted a call. There were about maybe 50 to 100 folks on that first call, figuring out where everybody aligned in the pipeline, trying to figure out where the gaps and overlap were. And what we all very quickly realized was we have no contiguous pipeline in Arkansas. The parts and pieces are not interrelated with each other and communicating very well. And so as a part of that, Lauren got Lonnie Emmerd was on that call with the Arkansas Center for Data Sciences. They have the most successful IT apprenticeship program in the country. They recently won an award that they have more apprentices in the country than any other state does right now. I think they've put through 500 in the last 4 years. And so the Center for Data Sciences talked to the Office of Skills Development, which is under the Department of Commerce, and said, we know that our system works. We know it's replicable. Here's an industry in need. And so the Office of Skills Development gave us a $2 million grant for the next 4 years to try to replicate this apprenticeship program. So our goal this year is to get 50 apprentices. I've got about 25 transferring in from a solar program that a specific company started that they don't really want to have to manage, but we're doing so out of necessity. So I'm about halfway there already, albeit we're not stopping there, of course. I've got a ton of goals for the organization that go far beyond an apprenticeship program. And you can kind of see those on the bottom of the slide there, from education, from different data set lists to support, maybe you've got a school or a college that is looking for a speaker. How do they connect with those folks? So it'd be great to have a sort of a speakers database to that end, to be able to do some exposure events that are specific hands-on type events around green jobs, and to sort of just be that industry alignment, industry employer demand, mapping of these jobs, getting the same job titles, understanding all of those pathways, and ensuring that diversity is a big part of what we do. That's the real role that I'm playing right now. You can imagine I haven't been sitting idle for the last 3 months waiting on folks to transfer into the program. I've been having to define these roles, to find the education institutions that are willing to teach them, to help them find the curriculum, to ensure that our employer demand, can support those types of programs, to understand what the career progression is for these individuals if they enter here, where they go from there, making sure that there's a long-term strategy for them. So ultimately, that has been the role that I'm playing. But the other thing that I'm doing is making sure that we're not doing this in isolation. It's pretty rare, as y'all know, that Arkansas is so far ahead that we can't learn from other states. And so I'm a part of DOE's Better Buildings Workforce Accelerator, the International Renewable Energy Council's Clean Energy Workforce Alliance. They connected me, for example, to Florida, who has the only Department of Labor approved solar installer apprenticeship in the country. They connected me with her so I could hold a conversation and learn from how she did things there. The Building Performance Association. Just yesterday, I joined the National Skills Association's business leaders. They have a United for Workforce Partnerships to make sure that they're helping to really flush out that whole pipeline as well. And then there's an Arkansas apprenticeship team as well. So just to give you a feel for sort of where we are and what our goals are. So as I'm talking to employers, to training institutions, to governmental organizations, these are the types of questions that I'm asking. I'm not out there selling apprenticeship as the solution. I want to know what we've been doing that's not working. If employers are saying workforce is our greatest need, why? Why are we not scaling? What are the problems there? What's holding us back? What are our barriers? What are the positions that they're having trouble, just finding on the street, the skilled staff that they can't find? What are the positions that have no training programs and the employers are completely responsible for training those folks up to learn the skills that they need to perform those jobs? And for the employers who say, oh, people just don't want to work, well, let's work together to figure out what those barriers to entry are. That talent reached out to you at one point, and if they didn't call you back, there's a reason why. And let's figure out what that is. Is it transportation? Is it lack of phone? What are the issues? What are causing retention concerns? Why are folks leaving companies or leaving these careers in total? And how can we sort of align all of that? I want to align the job role within the company to understand what their career progression is, whether they're with that company or outside of it, what the training that they need in each of those progressions are, and how those lead to nationally recognized accreditations and licensures. And then who are the other players? I forget sometimes that I'm not doing this alone. It sure feels like it right now. I'm initiating all the conversations and whatnot, but there are other organizations that have already been through these paths to help support. So I just want to talk quickly about the apprenticeship model, because I do think it's a really interesting model. When I joined this organization, I was using internship and apprenticeship interchangeably, honestly. So, an internship, which is what was sort of the basis of both Integrity and Arkansas Earth Day for me. I had a lot of interns. The goal is that they're usually a student. They're doing this to get some work experience. They may not even be considered a full employee. They're always short-term or part-time. Rarely is it even a year-long apprenticeship necessarily. They may even be unpaid, which is legal in certain capacities, but they might be unpaid. If they're paid, they're usually low paid, minimum wage or slightly above. And the employee is kind of hoping they get some knowledge. They hope that they get a job, that comes out of this, enough work experience to get a job in the future. And the employer is potentially getting a really talented person for a short term, saving them money over having to hire a full-time employee with all the benefits and everything that brings on. With an apprenticeship program, you get hired first. There is no guessing whether the program will get you a job. You get hired first. As a part of that job, you get training there's both classroom training and on the job training. Very often that classroom training, you are being paid your rate by your employer while you're sitting in class getting trained. You are a full-time employee with all associated benefits. It is at least 1 year long. It is always paid, and you're guaranteed pay increases as you, finish these classroom experiences as your skills increase. There is usually a career pathway and a Department of Labor certificate or some type of career, certification that comes out of it. And the employer gets a tax credit, a $3,000 tax credit, I'm sorry, $2,000 tax credit, and they can get reimbursed for some of that classroom training up to $3,000 as well. There's significant other benefits there too. So the components of any registered apprenticeship. Now, apprenticeships can be registered. Our apprenticeship program is registered with the Department of Labor, but that is because that's how our state has things set up. It is possible that later this year, next year, we will be an SAA state, which means that the state itself will approve those apprenticeship programs. And there's benefits and drawbacks both ways. It gives you a lot more flexibility. We potentially lose sources of federal funding to that end. But we're a Department of Labor registered apprenticeship. It always starts with business involvement. So what's interesting to me is as I'm talking to certain training providers, they're saying, oh, we're going to start a solar training program. Oh, that's great. Who have you been talking to? What employers have you been talking to? Oh, we haven't been talking to any. We just know it's coming. We see it coming down the pipeline. In not talking to the employers, they are graduating people that the employer don't have the skills the employers need for their jobs. And so those have to be connected. So in an apprenticeship model, it's really the employer that takes the lead and said, these are the skills I need. This is the direction we see the industry growing. Then they provide that on-the-job training under a mentor. They work with or they provide themselves that related technical instruction, the sort of classroom training. I use classroom loosely because it could be online. There's a whole variety of different things. You get rewards for skill gains as the apprentice, guaranteed raises, and then you get those accreditations. So from the apprentice viewpoint, when we are trying to find that talent, Jenny is helping them with their resumes. She's doing interview skills. She's figuring out what their barriers to entries are, what the absolute requirements from the employer are that they may need to add to their resume before they're ready. Then once they're hired, they have 144 hours of related technical instruction of classroom training time. They have 2,000 hours of on-the-job training under a mentor, and they get those wage increases and the credentials that go along with that. The employer gets a skilled, motivated, qualified, diverse workforce, right? Like that's their goal. They need a better pool of workforce to pull from, but they also get savings, $3,000 for the training. That's what we can reimburse the employers out of our grant. The $2,000 tax credit. We manage all of the project management and all the paperwork. We help them recruit. For every 20 we talk to, there's maybe one that's qualified. They don't have to go through the work of culling those out. There's a trial period where, if it's not looking like those are the skills that are right for that apprentice, then they can change. And the employer gets 84% retention from those that go through these apprenticeship programs. That's huge for them as well. But I always say to them that this is just part of a larger workforce strategy. Apprenticeship doesn't solve everything. You've got to have the right culture. You've got to have the right training. You've got to have the career progression. You've got to help with the exposure level for these careers. I mean, there's just so many other things that they need to be involved in to make this successful as well. So very generally, the process is that we start with the industry. What are the employer needs? How do we align that with what's happening nationally with the accreditations that are out there? Then the funding, the licensure, the Department of Labor registration. Then we get the talent and turn them over to the employers who help provide that education, that mentorship, and get that diverse talent. So the cool thing about this program is it's not just for those, say students just getting out of school. It can also be for adult learners, anybody wanting to change their career, but also for those within a company that just want to increase their skills to move up within the company. So let's say you've got a solar installer in a residential capacity. They are hauling the panels to the roof. They're installing the racking systems. They're keeping the job site clean. That might be their entry into these careers. Then they enter into an electrician apprenticeship, a 4-year apprenticeship, at the end of which not only do they know how to install solar, they are a full electrician in the state. Once they're very knowledgeable at that, they might move into solar operations and maintenance. Now they're going out and they're troubleshooting other arrays to figure out what the issues are, make sure they're working right, switch out inverters, bad wiring, whatever it might be. Once they're really good at that, they might move into solar design, into finance or sales roles. These are the types of progressions. I'm so sorry, my mouse is really jumpy here. But they might also move into other roles. So if you have an energy efficiency line, you've got the auditor, the utility rate analyst, the energy manager, and the energy engineer. Solar O&M could very easily step into utility rate analysis or energy manager, right? There's these sort of cross-pollination of these skills that needs to be understood, how those can move through. So let's talk about some solar challenges specifically. Solar is not all we do. And I talk about solar is like the only image, when you want to talk about green jobs, everybody slaps a solar panel on it. There's just not a whole lot of visuals that go along with this stuff. And I'm working to change that, pictures with real people in them. So I'm not talking about solar because it's, of that, but because it is probably the greatest need for employees in the state right now. So first, there's the Inflation Reduction Act. There is a part of the Inflation Reduction Act, and I have other slides that go more into detail on this. I wasn't planning to, but I'm happy to if you want me to. This is kind of my last slide here before I get into contact info anyway. But to get back up to the 30% investment tax credit for solar, 6% is the base. To add that additional 24% for arrays that are 1 megawatt and larger. So that's like no residential. We're talking very large commercial projects. They have to have 12.5% this year and 15% next year of all of their solar installation labor be performed by apprentices in a registered apprenticeship program. Now, that sounds great, except that the Department of Labor doesn't have any solar apprenticeships available other than the one that's only for Florida right now that Florida's approved. They're an SAA state, so it's not even available to me with the Department of Labor. I can't make new apprenticeships. I can only take existing apprenticeships and change them up to 25%. So we've taken the electrician apprenticeship, for example, and changed it to add solar education. Well, using the electrician ratio for the Department of Labor, they can only have 1 electrician per 1 journey worker on site. They cannot scale at a 1-to-1 ratio, and especially not quick enough to meet the needs of the investment tax credit. Now, this also applies, the investment tax credit also applies to Act 179D, which is the energy efficiency. By reducing energy, you get certain tax credits. I'm hugely in favor, but there's some issues surrounding some of this that were not thought out very well and don't integrate well. Then, another issue that we have within the state here is our municipal residential inspectors and our state electrician licensure board are saying that everybody on the roof has to be an electrician. I can tell you from what the employers are telling me, everybody on the roof doesn't want to be an electrician. You got guys that like working on roofs, that want to haul panels up, that want to lay racking, and they have no interest in going through a 4-year apprenticeship. So every time they're on long enough that they start getting on the roof and the employer enrolls them in an apprenticeship program, they drag their feet, they wait till they get kicked out, and they move to the next company. There's a retention issue going on there. Alternatively, you've also got electricians that the state board is saying don't have enough experience to be a residential electrician. They're having them do the entire 4 years, not just the 2-year path, the entire 4 years for commercial to prove they have enough experience. But what's interesting is that they are also requiring residential solar, the inspectors are requiring that they bring the entire house up to code. Every outlet has to be GFCI. I mean, they're having to do all of this work. So they're getting a whole lot of residential wiring experience. It just for some reason isn't counting toward their solar license, I mean, their electrician licensure. So part of my job has been to convene meetings between the electric licensure folks, the state electric licensure folks. He said, yeah, everybody on the roof doesn't have to be. I used to say that, I don't anymore. And I said, well, where is that in writing? Oh, I've never written it down. So all the other municipal inspectors are still doing what he had previously told them to do. So, you know, some of this is just getting them to document it so that we can then help to educate the inspectors. So that's on the books for later, is to educate not only the inspectors, but the appraisers of the value of these systems on people's homes and that type of thing. There's issues with the training providers. We don't have any solar education programs going on in the state right now that meet employers' needs and that meet an apprenticeship requirement of at least 144 hours. So UA Hope Texarkana has a great solar lab that was built on their campus. They are developing it, and they should have solar modules up, I think, in September. UA Pulaski Tech is developing programs. University of Arkansas is developing solar finance and sort of solar 101 level training. So now I'm trying to hook them up with the employers' needs and make sure that that they're training on what needs to be trained on, and that those trainings are specific to the job outcomes. Solar 101, if I take a solar 101 course and I go to an employer and say, I've taken a solar 101 course, it doesn't really help that much. They need it to be tailored to the thing that they need to know. So when I talk about education, I really talk about skills-based education. What are the skills that they need to learn to be able to do these functions in the real world, not just talk about solar intelligently? I'm not going to say it hurts, but it's not getting them the job in and of itself. And then we also have to put into effect solar ethics. So there's solar ethics for those that are installing, but there's also solar ethics that I would argue for those that are training their folks to do these jobs, that they're giving them the opportunity to get the accreditations in this industry, NABCEP accreditations and whatnot, that they're not just asking them to do wiring work, they're putting them in a registered apprenticeship program. I've had a few candidates come to me already and say, I've been working for 4 years as an electrician installing solar. I was never in an apprenticeship program. I should be an electrician by now. And I'm saying, there's nothing I can do. You have to start over. Another 4 years for you. So there's some ethics involved here that we would like to document and roll out as well. I think I've taken more than my share of time, so I would love to have answer any questions you might have. Here's my contact info. I'm loving this work. You can probably tell by my passion, and I'd love to hear the feedback that y'all have and questions.
April, thank you so much for that presentation and the fantastic work you're doing. I had no idea there were so many opportunities and so many obstacles. And so hats off to you for diving in full force.
Thank you. I didn't either, by the way, until I came in. I thought this will be easy.
Shouldn't everyone want this?
Yeah.
We've just got about 2 minutes left for questions. We do have someone sent me a question in the chat. This is from Clay, who he teaches at a community college, and he's wondering how his school can participate in what you're doing.
I've already held a number of calls with different community colleges, Clay, and I'm more than happy to hold a conversation with them as well. What I find interesting is that in the past, apprenticeship felt competitive with two-year college programs, but in reality, they're realizing now that I'm bringing them candidates that may not have gone through a two-year college otherwise, and I'm paying for that education. I'm reimbursing the employer who's then, paying for the training there. So there are some great opportunities between us to develop that those curriculums in concert with the employers and move folks into jobs quickly. We are doing a study, Jean, on the economic impact of, right now they're doing it for the solar jobs in the state, mostly related to the recent solar legislation, which sort of took away net metering and put a 5 megawatt cap. So those that were decarbing are pretty much stuck. They can't get to 100% decarbonization with only a 5 megawatt array for some of our larger institutions. So that needs to happen before the next legislative session. They're already in planning for the next legislative session to have that data. Whether or not that includes includes all green jobs, I'm doubtful. I think it'll probably just be mostly solar. ACEEE does put out a impact of green jobs on each state. They have their own metrics for how they calculate that. But in terms of an actual research study to that end, I think I'm going to have to make bigger waves before somebody puts that kind of money there.
April, could you just speak a little bit more about how the current solar legislation could impact what you're trying to do and the demand for solar in Arkansas and solar jobs?
So without net metering, it used to be that they had to pay at retail rates. Now they're only paying at wholesale rates for, every kilowatt you put on the grid. And what that means is it becomes less financially, just the numbers don't work out for residential solar. It used to be that we had, around an 8-year maybe payback. It's going to increase to about a 15-year payback, which means less and less folks will feel like it's a good choice. And that means that we'll have less employees. Now, I think that there's I was talking to an employer yesterday and I said, I don't expect us to feel that immediately, right? I mean, you guys have jobs going, which means that the workforce side of that we won't feel for quite a few months. And he said, no, we're feeling it now because the sales teams were all on hold waiting to figure out what happened with that legislation and then find out half their jobs are dead now. Central Arkansas Water was decarbonizing. They've got 5 megawatts. They can't do any more solar. They're done. They had somewhere around 50 megawatts they were planning. So that's a lot of jobs. It's a lot of money that we're going to lose out on as a result of this legislation.
Such a shame.
It is.
Thank you so much. They're calling us back to the main room.
Hi, is April still here?
Yep, April's still here.
Oh, great. We got cut short, Carol. Well, she just gave us the best presentation on this workforce training that she's heading up with Arkansas Advanced Energy Association. Really, really good. Thank you so much, April.
Thanks, April, for taking time out of your Sunday.
You bet. My pleasure. Thanks for having me, y'all.
Take care.
Was that
Okay.
recorded? Was that
Yes.
recorded?
I
Thank
hope
you,
so.
April.
It did record. I don't know where it's going to end up.
Well, it's supposed to end up on your computer and then we'll
It
put it
did.
in a, yeah, we'll
Hopefully. It didn't give me an option to choose, Carol, so hopefully it'll work.
oh, okay. We'll see if it worked. That's,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a new thing to be able to record in the breakout rooms. And what I was told was that we would have to just put it in a Google Doc or something and then share it. So we'll figure it out. And I'm concerned that this thing just started to record again when you came back in because I screwed up something on the recording earlier and I had turned it off.
Okay. Well, thanks again, April. Take care.
Yeah, April, it's great that you were able to be here. Exciting. Okay. So we just have a few minutes left. And Allison, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Did you want to drop the survey in the chat?
Yeah, I'm working on it right now.
Okay, great. Great. Of course you are. Okay, wonderful. So this really is an opportunity to just reflect on the day. I want to start by acknowledging you, everybody that's here, and especially those of you who led things. So wonderful. The work that you did to make it happen. I'm going to just switch to my gallery view so I can see you. And Teresa Noble, did you introduce yourself as a state coordinator? Because I forgot to. Does everybody know that you're a state coordinator?
I guess they do now.
Yeah, Teresa rocks. She's the best.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. It's been something else to do this logistically. I think we need about 3 tech people, don't you think? And then somebody to tell me when Madeline arrives.
Oh yeah, sorry, that's my bad, because I let her in and I should have let you know, Carol.
Yeah, that was really funny. I was calling her assistant at home on a Sunday afternoon. Where is she?
Well, thanks to you, Carol and Allison. I know y'all were the major creative forces. Really grateful to both of you.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's so fun to put something like this together. And Allison, it was Allison's idea. And what they challenge the regional fellows with is to find a passion project. And Allison has a different passion project, but I say a lot of her passion went into creating this as well. Very much so. So thank you, Allison. Thanks. to
Yes,
you.
really grateful.
So is there anything that anybody wants to share at the end? You know what I'd like to see? I'd like to see in the chat what action you're going to take. What action? What's one action that you see that you might take next week? Uh-huh. Did you put a link to that in the chat as well before you put it up? Cool. So this is the Poly V. My goodness. So Allison told me she was working on something. I can't keep up with her. That's clear. There's a slight difference in our ages, like 50 years. So Allison created a Poly V. So if you click on that, and then what's going to happen? What you're gonna, so we click on that, and then what? No, you gotta put it in the chat for me.
Yeah, so this is a poll EV. If you want to write a word about what you're taking away from this, or what you learned, you can write it there, and it's going to sort of create a word cloud that we can take a picture of and send out later on for just seeing what this conference means to everybody. But also, please write your actions or whatever else you want in the chat, or just share aloud.
Wonderful. So Allison, I love the creativity of this. So she also put it in the chat for me because I'm not doing the scanning. And when you just click on that Poly V, you can jump right down to the thing that says skip. You don't have to put your name in it because it's just going to be a word cloud. It's not going to say, and if you want two words to go together, put a dash between them. So like great listening, it would show a word cloud of great and of listening, or the dash between them, they come together.
Carol, this is
Yeah.
Jack Meisenbach.
Hi, Jack.
One of the things that came up in our last breakout was activities at our Capitol in Jefferson City and who would be working the legislative issues there. Well, I put a note in the chat that the Missouri Sierra Club Lobby Day is scheduled for the 5th of April in
Yes.
Jefferson City at the Capitol
Yes.
building.
Mm-hmm.
And I put in Michael Berg.
Michael Berg, who used to
B-E-R-G.
live in my house. Michael Berg.
Pardon?
Michael Berg used to live in my house.
Okay, well, you
I
know
know
who he
it
is
well.
then.
Yeah.
Anyway, I put his phone number in there. 314-456-1954 if anybody would like to participate with the Sierra Club on Lobby Day, because I'm sure we're going to have a handful of bills that we're going to go make the rounds and visit all our illustrious legislators on.
And the challenge, Jack, is for you in your chapter to look at what Michael's proposing to lobby on, and then to look at it and to choose. This is what Tony was referring to, this brand new updated set of guidelines. When we go to take action like lobbying at our state level, we look to see, is this a CCL thing at all or not? Am I going to go there as Carol Brayford, or am I going to go there as a St. Louis chapter? Or am I going to get the consensus of all the other chapters and say, I'm here for CCL Missouri? And you're not going to say, I'm here for CCL, period, national, because you don't want to, I'm telling you my opinion, you don't want to actually have to go to our government affairs group, and it's not a national issue. So they wouldn't even know how to evaluate it. So the stuff they're doing at the local level is really important, at the state level and the local level. And that's the kind of guidelines that we're just updating to get clearer, because we're starting. It's so great that you brought this up, Jack, because we're starting to do a whole lot more of that with these new policy agendas items that we have. So it's great. And I'd be happy to talk to you about it more if you have other questions. But I'm glad you brought it up. Really great.
Yay, look
Well,
at the poll. Look at the poll.
Look at that. And Jack, say hi to Michael for me.
I
He's
will.
wonderful. He rode his bike everywhere. He told his mother that he only had a car so he could go visit her because she lived out in the county somewhere. Everywhere in town, he rode his bike. Really impressive.
You know, one thing I wish you guys would look into, on the March 15th, the EPA signed off the finalized Good Neighbor plan to force states to reduce emissions from power plants and industrial sources.
Mhm.
And the reason I'm on this is because Missouri has to reduce their power plant emissions by 61%.
Wow.
That's the highest in the whole country.
Wow.
And frankly, this is going to enable CCL's price on carbon, I think, because they're going to be shutting down power plants all over Missouri because of this, because our plants are very old and very dirty.
Mhm.
So, and this is not just Missouri, this is going to impact, I think there's 22 states that are involved with this.
Yeah, I think it's the same thing, Jack, that I'm getting some notes about right now about who has taken some action, the states that have to take some action that needs to be done quickly. I'll email you about that if that's the case. I might be thinking of something else, because for the last week, I've had my attention on something other than the emails I've been getting that weren't about the regional conference. Does that surprise you? Yeah. And we'll have more conversation about those the policy guidelines. We've had them for a long time, but now that we're doing so much more at the state and local level, it's a bigger issue, and one that we just, they're guidelines. Remember that we trust people to do the right thing. So in your own mind, just say, is this part of CCL's agenda or not? And if not, ask a question. If you really want to do something, you can always testify or lobby on your own behalf. CCL is not about to tell you not to, if it's something you feel strongly about. So, okay.
Thanks
Look
for a
at
great
that.
conference, everybody.
Yeah, thank you. Wonderful.
Yes,
Thanks,
thank you.
everyone.
It was great. Great to
Yeah.
see everybody.
Good to
Yeah.
see
Thank you,
too.
Carol. Thank you, Allison.
Thank you.
Good
Have a
seeing
great
y'all.
afternoon, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
And if anybody wants to stay
Bye.
on, Allison is willing to hang out with you or go in a breakout room and answer questions. So she's offered to do that if you still have questions, and we'll be sending you stuff. Do that. Yeah, we'll send you the survey.
Have a good rest of the day, everybody.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Last
Yes.
week's